In today's video, we're going to talk about the three Fujinon 23mm, the f1.4, the f2, and the newly released f2.8. We're mainly going to focus on sharpness and quality. That's really what I want to go over here. I'm not going to show you samples of photos and so forth, but I really want to focus on how sharp these three lenses are and how they compare. One of these three lenses surprised me, but not in a good way, and you'll find out in a moment which one that is. All the test photos I took were shot on the Fujifilm X-T50 at 40 megapixels, so we get the latest sensor with the maximum megapixels, and you will see on every file, I renamed the file with the model of the lens that I'm testing and the aperture we're on. That way you can always see where we're at. The first thing I want to show you here is how the f1.4 model is more cropped in than the f2 and f2.8 lenses, as you can see right here. When I move, you see it is on the tripod at the same distance, and I literally just swapped the lenses. So it seems like the 23 f1.4 is more zoomed in versus the f2 and f2.8 models, which is a little strange, to be honest, because it's supposed to be the same lens, the same focal length. All right, let's talk about the Fujinon 23mm f1.4. As you can see now, I'm going to move from f1.4 to f2, f2.8, and f4. And if you notice the vignette, you will see that the vignette will disappear when you get to f4. From there on, there's no more vignette, 5, 6, f8. So as you move on, there's no more vignette, but until f4, you will have that vignette. And when you look at f1.4, it is pretty intense. You can see how dark it looks. We're going to take a look and see how it compares between f1.4 and f2. So if I zoom in here, you'll see it's not super sharp, but it is a little bit sharper at f2. For example, this 4/3 here. Or if you look at, for example, here on the edges, it looks a little bit sharper at f2, but it is not yet super sharp. There's still, I mean, it's not bad for f1.4. It's actually pretty good. It looks pretty good, I would say. But you can see how it looks a little softer on these 2, 3, 4 compared to the f2 aperture, but they look very similar. It's hard to tell the difference between the two. Same here. If you look on the far edges, you will see a little bit of an improvement. Now let's take a look at f2 versus f4. You'll see a noticeable improvement, but it is not drastic. It looks very similar, actually. I mean, most of everything looks very similar. All right, let's now take a look at f1.4 versus f5.6. This is when you're going to see a pretty good difference. Looking at the edges, for example, here 16:9, you can see it looks way sharper at f5.6. I say way sharper, but truth be told, it is not bad at all for an f1.4 lens. Same here, 9:6. It looks better, obviously, on the 5.6. Even these lines here, they look a little bit softer than here, but I was really surprised and good to see the difference between the two. Now, if we take a look at f5.6 and f8, you will see that at f8, it starts to lose a little bit of quality on the sides here of sharpness. You can see the difference between the two. And when we move to f11, it gets softer and softer, especially here, you can see it. You see f16 is actually quite soft. f16 is softer than f1.4. So we got f1.4 on the right, f16 on the left. And look at the difference. Honestly, I prefer f1.4, even though it looks a little darker because of the vignettes on the edges, but look at this. I find this to look sharper than f16. So the sweet spot of this lens really is f5.6. My conclusion for this Fujinon f1.4 is that it's a great lens overall. It's got good quality, even when wide open, and the best results will happen between f4 and f5.6. Now let's move on to the Fujinon 23mm f2. If you take a look at the edges, this is the lens that shocked me the most in this test because it looks really bad compared to the f1.4 and the f2.8 models. Let's now compare f2 to f4. When you have the Fujinon f2 at f2 and you compare it to f4, you can see that it is still not very sharp at f4. Obviously, f2 looks horrendous. Honestly, it looks really bad. You can even see some chromatic aberration on the side here and how it's basically the white and the black and the white are like merging together on the sides here. It's bleeding into the black. And same for these lines here. You see how the white is bleeding into the black and they're like merging. It's actually it's actually really bad. Even the writings here, see values in 100x lines, you can see how much better it is at f4. So we are 2 stops further here, but f4 still doesn't look super sharp. Now let me show you f4 compared to f5.6. I don't know if you noticed, but here, for example, there is some chromatic aberration on these lines, and you still find them here at f5.6. I have to say I was shocked with the bad quality. Same here. It looks better, but it is still very, very similar. And we are at f5.6, which is, for most lenses, the sweet spot. So really, if you want to use the Fujinon f2 at its sharpest aperture, that would be f5.6. And then you're going to start losing quality right after. So my conclusion on this Fujinon f2 is that it is a little disappointing, and I would not recommend it for its image quality alone. Unfortunately, this is the only lens that I own, because before we didn't have the f2.8 lens, which I'm going to tell you more about in a moment. So this was the more compact choice between the two, but now that we have 3 of them, I'll show you what the f2.8 will give you. This was the one that surprised me the most out of the 3. Because of its sharpness, great quality for such a compact lens, all right? So if you take a look at the sharpness at f2.8, so this is its widest aperture. It is a Pancake lens, so I didn't expect it to, to provide such great results, but look at this. It looks actually much sharper than the f2 model and probably sharper than the f1.4 model. It looks good all the way to the edges. Even the writings here, they look okay for being so far out. As you can see around here, it looks okay. f2.8 to me looks better than f5.6. This is a strange thing. Literally 2, 3, 4, 5 look better on the f2.8 than on the 5.6, at least on the edges. Here, these lines look softer at 5.6. The rest looks pretty much the same, looks very similar. But for example, here printed by looks better at f2.8. And the center of the image looks very similar on both. I don't notice anything strange. So I think the f2.8 is the winner here, unless you need to have something wider where you need a wide aperture. But otherwise, I find this lens to be incredible. Now you will notice that once you pass f5.6, you're gonna start losing sharpness on the corners. So let's compare f2.8 with f11. On the right, we got f11. On the left, we got f2.8. The more you close the aperture, the softer it's gonna get. And yes, that does happen. That tends to happen to lenses, of course. But in this case, I find it pretty blatant how bad it gets when you get to f11 compared to f2.8. So really, this lens's sweetest spot is, to me, f2.8. Even at the center, look how soft it gets here. Basically, this lens is usable from f2.8 to f5.6, and that's when you get the best results out of it. My conclusion for this f2.8 model is, if you don't need a wider aperture such as f1.4 and you can live with it, this is the lens I would recommend for photography. The image quality is great, it is compact, and it comes at a great price. So to recap, the f1.4 is great all-rounder. It's sharp even when wide open, and if you don't mind the size and the budget, this might be the lens for you. The f2 version is fast and small, but it is soft. It's only worth it for the budget and for the silent autofocus. And the f2.8 version is compact, it is sharp from wide open, and it's got an excellent value. So bottom line, f1.4 is great if you need light and bokeh. f2 is great if you need tiny and quiet, and f2.8 is the best price to quality. I hope this brought some clarity for you if you're hesitating between the 3. Let me know in the comment section below if you own one of these lenses, if you're planning on selling one to buy another, and which one you think is the best. Take care, see you in my next video, and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss any of my future content. Cheers.